when I see those plantain, I see one they sell on the street, I'm just wondering, is this really plantain they're selling or what? Because we have the real stuff. So the theme for today's conference is Beyond the Propaganda, Unveiling the Truth About GMOs. And we have experts in the house who will take us through all that. You will agree with me that in today's Nigeria, there's a lot of propaganda concerning GMOs. And in fact, when the promoters want to speak about GMOs, all they say is they're like parrots. They don't say anything new. They just keep on saying, any GMO we approve is safe. Any GMO we approve is safe. It's safe, it's safe, it's safe, it's safe. Eat it, eat it. You know, don't complain. And sometimes they say, you have to trust your government. I don't know why you are laughing. Don't you trust our government? No. Well, you know, it's like when a man says, if your father tells you, don't you know I'm your father? That means there's something wrong. A man tells his wife, don't you know I'm your husband? You know, there's a problem. When we begin to say, do we really trust our government? It means there's a problem. And so no official should come and tell us, trust the government. We can trust government by what government does. The footprint of the government and the handwork of governments, they are very clear for all of us to see. So today we are hoping that the seeds for reclaiming our food heritage will be sown in this meeting. We need to reclaim our food heritage. So of course, we need to decolonize our taste buds because we've gradually grown away from our natural crops, from our natural foods. And we're eating things we don't even know. Things that were never known by those who brought us into this world. And you know, some crops that you don't even see. If you go to some places like in Niger Delta, they used to eat a lot of cocoyam. You hardly find cocoyam these days because of oil pollution and because of other things. You don't see sweet yam. You don't see yellow yam. You don't see water yam. And some people are wondering, what is he talking about? There are these varieties of yam that we have. And sometimes if yam comes from Makurdi, you know that this came from Makurdi. If it came from, the yam came from Ogoja, you know it came from that part of the country. But now we have uniform tubers of yam that are not, some of them not, they're just, you know, and no matter how small the tuber, many people can't afford to buy one tuber of yam. So now in the market, they slice it. You can buy a slice of yam and go home and cook it. I mean, it shows that things are really good, right? Things are really terribly good. Terribly good. So now, well, we want to recover food heritage because this is where we can build food sovereignty. And it's only food sovereignty that can assure us of food security when we maintain our biodiversity. There was a time that the world had thousands of varieties of crops that human beings depended on. But now it's been withered down to about 12 major crops that the whole world is feeding on. And so we are being squeezed into a very narrow pathways that does not in any way assure us of food security. Some of this happened from industrialization, when food became a commodity. Food was never a commodity in our traditional societies. Food was always a celebration. If somebody came to your house and they agreed to eat food, it means the person did not really like you. If you present food to a visitor and he doesn't eat it, it means there's a problem, something with your relationship. But today, visitors may even be asked to pay for their lunch. Because food is now a commodity. And to make food a commodity means that food has to become an industrial activity. And industrial agriculture works best in monocultures. So you have a farm as big as Abuja, you plant only corn. So you have it everywhere green, but it's actually a desert. Because only one crop. If anything happens, everything is gone. Anything happens, you lose everything. So we have every reason to fight very hard to ensure that we are not squeezed into the box that we cannot get out from. Another thing that has eroded our food heritage is the colonial idea of cash cropping. Have you ever heard of cash cropping? You are growing the crop for cash, not for food. And so instead of growing food, you grow what you can export for foreign exchange. And that was colonial because the colonial masters required products from the colonies. And that idea is still very predominant because we are dying for foreign exchange. Because everything, the best achievement of a politician is to attract foreign direct investment. Am I right? They're fighting for that. They go on road shows. I say, come, we're going to open up our economy. We make ease of business, which means no controls. And this is what we're seeing in the GMO biosafety area in Nigeria today. If you go to the National Biosafety Management Agency and place an application and say you want it to be treated quickly, I need a very quick response, you pay a higher fee for that. So if you want normal service, you pay. If you want quick service, you pay for it. Now, is that a way to ensure regulation? It's about making money. Because if I really want it very quick, I can pay you double what that fee would be if I want it quick. I say, look, I want it quicker. And so you won't have time to regulate, you won't have time to check anything. That is why the one key part of the law is that if you want to import GMO products to Nigeria, you must give notice about 290 days or thereabout ahead of time before you think of importing it to Nigeria. That means almost 1 year's notice in advance so that they can be checked, can be examined. But there are some things that have come to a lot in the market today that never gave any notice to anybody. And nobody's checking either. That's what you will find in that booklet you were given, I hope you were, which says what is on your plate. A lot of things on the market shelf. And then all the other ones in the market, they're in the farm. In 1st May 2016, the first approvals for GMOs were made in Nigeria. One was for commercial placement or market placement of BT cotton. And there were a lot of media reports that once we approve GMO cotton, then our textile industries will come back to life. That was in 2016. How many years ago? 8 years ago. 8 years ago, since BT cotton was introduced. Has the textile industry come back to life? Are they even talking about it nowadays? But the cotton is already in circulation. So we're treating we're not going to the root of the problem. The industry did not die because there was no cotton. It died because of political reasons, because of so-called structural adjustment program, which was imposed on Nigeria through the World Bank and the IMF. That is why when government stopped investing in having extension officers to help our farmers grow crops in a good way and get a better yield. But today they tell you, once it's GMO, then it's going to feed the world. GMOs have been around since about 1996, and yet hunger is increasing in the world. Why has GMOs not wiped out hunger in the world? Is there no hunger in the world? Is there hunger in Nigeria? Is there hunger in Nigeria? It's not, GMOs will not solve it. There are many other reasons why we have hunger. There are reasons why our farmers cannot go to farm. They are not staying away from the farm because there's no GMO in the farm. They are staying in the farm, stay away from the farm because of insecurity. They stay away from the farm because when they produce the food, they can't even get it to the market because there's no infrastructure. So there are many other reasons. But so today our hope is, with the array of discussions we're going to have from our experts, and by your own contributions, questions and comments, we're going to we're going to be on the way to bring back our indigenous food varieties and decolonize our taste buds and kick out GMOs. What must be done to ensure food sovereignty? Ensure stringent regulation of GMOs in Nigeria. In fact, ban GMOs in Nigeria. Take control of our food system. Preserve the integrity of our ecosystems and preserve overall biosafety.
To enter a caveat, I think Dr. Bassi, they have invited experts. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert at all. Probably what qualifies me to speak on this topic is that I eat food. I eat food, and I believe that if we are talking about food, or rather if the experts are talking about food, they should also allow us to sit in and listen, and they should also allow us to say one or two things. So it's on the basis of that I'm going to be saying a few things. I am hoping that they will pass these slides to you so you will be able to look at the learning points. We are not going to waste time on the learning points. Let's go to the third slide. This slide gives us an opportunity to say something about food. If you look at these interesting people, I don't know if you believe in evolution. This is actually where we came. Can you go back to the slide? Okay, they're having issues. But second person here is Homo habilis. After Homo habilis is Homo erectus. After Homo erectus is Neanderthal man. And then the last person there is Homo sapiens. We are Homo sapiens. That is the truth of the matter. And the food systems of the first in healthier food, they were living healthier lives, and they were also living at peace with their environment. This is very important for us to understand. What we call agriculture is the invention of Homo sapiens. And it doesn't have a long history. It doesn't have a long history at all. It is just about 12,000 years before Christ. So we are talking about something that is recent history. But agriculture did something which is also very, very important, which all of us must understand. It changed the way we were living. These people were living in bands, and every person was in one band or the other. If they exhausted resources in one location, they would go to the next location. They were moving. Because they were moving, men and women didn't have the latitude to have many children. Because if you have to carry a child at your back for long distances, you would be very careful to have many children. They will not stay in one place. They were moving about. And moving about with children is a challenge. Women know this. Men also know this. But by the time agriculture was invented, crops and animals were domesticated. It meant people could stay in one place and they could sleep with their wives for as long as they wanted. And the wives could have as many children as they wanted. So population started increasing. And that was the beginning of the problem. Because people were not going to the farms to produce food. Other people decided that they would not be farmers. The population was big enough, so they decided that they would take the role of the gods and become leaders. They were not producing food, but other people were producing the food for them. Other people decided that, oh, we will not go to the farm, we will defend the land. So they were soldiers. Other people were producing food for them. And then other people decided that they would be religious entrepreneurs. They would stand in the gap between human beings and the gods. And then the gods will be speaking to them, they will be speaking to other people. But they needed food. So they had to convince other people to produce food for them. And then other people tried to let us know. Sometimes we see GMOs being paraded as food or science. Sometimes we see them as taking the potential of being weapons. Sometimes we see them, lay people like me, we see them as poisons. Sometimes we see them and those promoting them as just promoting them for profit. Sometimes we talk about quantity when we hear about GMOs. Sometimes we talk about quality. And then there are safety issues, which I'm very sure we have to raise here. And then, of course, the environmental issues, which are also very important. I should be very interested, because we have a lot of specialists here, to understand really what anybody coming from outside and talking about GMOs is saying that is different from the type of experience our forefathers had. And I will divert here just within a few minutes to let you have an idea of what I'm thinking about. You know, during the colonial period, something very interesting happened. We had plural gods. If you went to every other place, they had their own god. Some of them had even more than one. And then suddenly people came in, and then they told us about a one God. And all of us went in that direction. Every single one of us went in that direction. Something happened. First, at the point we were going in the other direction, leaving our own gods, we didn't understand even our own gods and their place in our survival and in our future. Today, I see the argument about GMOs similar to what happened to us when we abandoned our own gods and followed the one God. The people who come in the name of the GMOs project them as what is going to serve us and to have us feed ourselves. But in the meantime, you and I know that we have food systems that are resilient, we have food systems that are nutritious, and we have land that is going to feed us if we plant on it. Because there are other countries in the world, my brothers and sisters, that have less land than Nigeria does, but they are producing enough food to feed their own citizens, and they are not using GMO seeds. If you go to Egypt, Egypt is just that strip of the Nile Valley. They produce their own food. Can we go to the next one? They produce their own food, and it's sufficient. The challenge I see in our own country is that most of us don't even understand the food bank we have in this country. We don't understand. We don't understand the value of the food we have in this country. And as long as we don't understand the value of the food we have in this country, it is very easy for any person to come and say that, look, ignore your own food systems and go for the other one. And they will say it with a lot of convincing evidence. The GMO process, and I'm not a specialist, I'm just somebody who eats food and wants to understand what is happening to food. What the scientists, and I'm sure some of them are here, try to do is they identify threats which they say are desirable. And because these traits are tied to the genes of these plants and animals, this is where they are really doing the damage. They say, oh, everything is safe. In fact, they will tell you that it's even safer to eat some of these foods than to eat what you plant from your backyard. And then the lawyers come in, and then they do the regulatory framework. But the challenge for me, a layman, engaging with this process is more here. As we speak in this country, there are not up to 5 labs that have international certification. They are not up to 5, particularly in the public universities we have. So if somebody is saying that, look, this thing is safe, and then you cannot test whether it is safe because you don't have the facilities and the know-how, on what basis can you accept that? Because science has deceived us over and over and over again. In fact, science is now becoming like religion. You know, it was from religion and the way we were dissatisfied with it that science emerged. And science is now replacing religion because anytime you are speaking to a scientist, he wants you to take it for granted that he's telling you the truth because he's a scientist. But we also know that these scientists are founded. And those who give them money for research tell them what to say and what to write. They do that. And any person who is a serious scientist knows that the moment you start thinking differently, they will cast you away. So GMOs are just like a hook. This is a fish. They look very attractive, but certainly if this fish is stupid enough to swallow this, there's a problem. There's a problem. So if you go to the next one, we'll try to look at what they are telling us and why that is attractive to those of us, those countries, those people who cannot ask questions. They are saying that you will have more harvest. They are saying that what they are producing is pest resistance. And then, of course, it may be, but it is because the very people who are promoting this are the ones who are making some of these herbicides. So they promote this, they make it, you buy it, they are richer for it. Whether it damages you is not their problem. It's just like the fisherman who is using that hook. Does it matter to him whether that fish catches it? In fact, if the fish catches it, the fisherman will go with a bigger catch, isn't it? Then, of course, they are telling us that they are drought resistance, they improve nutrition, they help with herbicides, they are tolerant, they can be used for vaccine. And then, this is the one that really interests these interesting people we call politicians and leaders. It will end starvation, it will end hunger. Now that we are talking about hunger in this country, most of the politicians are on this, not knowing that the whole thing is a hook. Because every single place where this has been attempted, it has not ended starvation. It's not capable of ending starvation, and it's not going to end it. But it is getting money, more money into the pockets of people who are promoting. Can we go to the next one, please? This is the flip side. If GMOs are good, they are part of the industrial agricultural complex. And that is very harmful. Every person knows it. These people also want to control our seeds because they patent the seeds. And the seeds are very expensive. Now, your uncle, your father, your mother could have her own seeds from my own farm. If you compare him or her to buy, and at a point the person does not give him or her the seeds, he or she cannot go to the farm. And these people are devious. These are people who have run into certain cultures with second-hand clothes laced with microbes to kill those people who wear them. So on what basis would you think that one day, if you allow yourself to grow their patented seeds, they will not withhold these seeds from you if they want to mess you up? They can. And then, of course, the destruction of genetic resources, small farmer extinction, because everywhere when you are talking about industrial agriculture, they are telling you you have to cultivate more land. Cultivating more land means you have to take the small plots from the small farmers. And if you do that, what do they live on? Then, of course, there are health questions, there are potential damages, there are regulatory framework challenges, and then there's R&D capability. I will talk about R&D capabilities very, very briefly. The reason is very simple. The reason is very, very simple. We have ceded our capacity to think to the Europeans. They are thinking for us. We have ceded our capacity to imagine to other people, and they are imagining for us. We have ceded our capacity to create to other people, and they are creating for us. And there can be nothing as damaging as this. There can be nothing as damaging as this. And any people who think, who imagine, and who create have to think, imagine, and create with what they have, not with what somebody brings from the outside. Because if you allow people to bring from the outside, they will bring and introduce what will be skewed in their own favor. It has happened to our educational system. Whatever we are doing as educated people in this country is invariably benefiting the Western world. It is invariably benefiting them. It's not benefiting us. Because if it were benefiting us, we will not be talking about GMOs today. We have whole universities that are universities of agriculture. We have whole institutes that are institutes of agriculture. If you go to Zaria, for example, Zaria has maybe close to 10 of the institutes of agriculture. For God's sake, what are they doing that other people are coming here and telling us about GMOs, and they are not situating that in the context of our own food systems? We have food systems, and we have to study them. Because if it is what is local to us, no person will be talking about tractors, for example. I'm saying this because those of you who are from Niger State, we have been hailing this governor. He thinks that the issue of agriculture is about tractors. If you have your own people who are using their hands to cultivate, and you want to help, the first thing is to bring in small implements that they can use with their own hands. That is where to think. It's not the tractor. How many of the people can afford the tractors? And of course, even if they afford to, how many of those tractors, if they are spoiled, can be repaired by our own people? Who is buying those tractors? I mean, who is supplying those tractors? So these are some of the issues. Please go on. There's food security. I'm very sure every person has an understanding of what food security is. I will not stay too much on that. The next slide is about food insecurity. You can go on. Which is also something which we really understand. Then we go to the next slide, which will lead us to a few issues that will help us to understand the Nigerian food. Government and country must protect what they produce. If your country becomes a dump, like Nigeria is a dump for virtually anything, it means that there's nothing that we can get in this country. Then, of course, we have heavy food imports, and then there are policy challenges, and then much of the food we produce is from the informal sector, and we've not been able to manage the informal sector. The people who are, in fact, if we look at GMOs, it is an attempt to sacrifice the informal sector for the GMOs to be accepted. Let's go to the next slide. We're trying to round up, and we'll round up very quickly. When we are looking at GMOs, and I'm not a specialist, I want you to understand. So these are just my random thoughts. Is insecurity being sponsored in Nigeria to subvert the country's food sovereignty so as to bring in GMOs? We have to ask that question. Is somebody trying to ensure we are not secure in this country? Farmers don't go to the farm. There's shortage of food, so that when they mention GMO, every person will jump to it. Why is Bill Gates pushing for high cost, high input, and chemical-dependent food systems? Why is he doing that? If we come and we understand what our needs here are, and Bill Gates has the money, why is he insisting that it must be his own way? Why is he not ready to engage with us? Are those investing in patented food crops and engineered animals harming or helping poor farmers and food security? It's a question we have to ask. To what extent has the Alliance for Green Revolution, I understand they have given it a new name now, but to what extent has it transformed African agriculture? Because in other parts of the continent where this has been tried over a period of time and is sunk in a lot of money, there's really no much help coming from there. Let's go on. How many minutes do I have? 5 minutes. Thank you so much. These are the statistics from food. Really, we are such a foolish people. And I've said this before, we are such a foolish people. For us, and this is just IPOS 2023 coming from the European Union. We are not talking about other countries where we import food. We are such a foolish country. We are such a foolish country. Please go on. Go on, please. These are global industrial players, which you know them. There are about 10 of them. Most of them are from the US. You can go on. I'm hoping this can be given to you. And all of them are interested in seed production and distribution. They are interested in agrochemicals. They are interested in grain processing and trading. And they are interested in R&D. And the R&D is not R&D predicated on the African situation or the Nigerian situation, but predicated on how they can really turn the whole production to feed the world and the industries of the developed world. Please go on. This slide for me is a very interesting slide. For science to replace religion. Because initially it was the priests and the religious people who had knowledge in their hands. And they thought that it was impossible to question that knowledge because it came from above. So science was able to question that. So science has now overtaken religion to the point that once the scientists are arguing, they don't even want you to doubt. They have forgotten that it was doubt that produce science. It is doubt that can help science to be more meaningful to the world. I want you to know that very, very quickly. Go to the next slide. And science has played its hands. If you understand this slide, as a layman, I would have known that I have actually added value to this city. To influence global agricultural policies, governance at all levels. So they are going to states to make sure that they get what they want for their pockets. And we are talking about an example which is very typical, the Cornell Alliance for Science. Cornell, for those of you who know, is one of the leading American universities. And what do? This is an alliance promoted chiefly by Bill Gates. And they are involved as a propaganda outfit using science to promote GMOs in Africa. And they are very active in Nigeria. Whatever you are doing here, if you don't know who the enemies are, if you don't know how they are coming in, if you don't know that they have more access to government, they have more access to policymakers, they have more access to universities, it means that you are not doing anything. You have to know them and you have to confront them. What do? They train. This should actually be in quotation marks. They train and build capacity for people to advocate for GMOs. And I'm happy either Basil or my brother here said, these people, they are not saying anything new. They are just repeating things. And as they repeat them, and as they say they are doing science, the person who doubts is the person who is the culprit. Once you doubt them, they say, oh, you don't know. They engage an outreach. So they are even going to farmers to convince them. Then, of course, they are using communication. They have got journalists. They have got journalists in Nigerian papers, in African papers, who are writing for them. They give them information, they write. And these people think, and then they give academic fellowships. They are still people in the Nigerian university. They are happy to jump to the UK. They are happy to jump to the US. They are happy to jump to other parts of the world on fellowships, not knowing that those fellowships are traps. They are traps. They want to train you so that you will come back, you do what they want for their own profit. Then, of course, they are using advocacy and policy support, and then they are claiming that they are collaborating. Please go on. We have just 1 or 2 slides to go. So, of course, these people are for profit. There is no doubt about it. Go on. We make this point that Nigeria must feed herself. This country must feed herself. We have the people, we have the arable land, we have the crops. We just need to organize properly, think, imagine, and create food systems that can feed us. Please go on. How can we do this? I have given some ways we can do this. Please go on. What is my closing stand? The doubts against GMOs are credible doubts. Let no person deceive us. The doubts we have against GMOs are credible. GMO science is driven by greed and profit. Nigeria and African food security must be predicated on the small farmer using local plant and animal species. Our agricultural R&D must be foregrounded on our thinking, our imagination, and our creativity. We can't cede these three things to any other person. If we cede, we are gone, because they will skew whatever they give us to their own favor. And my position is we have sufficient arable land to produce to meet our food needs. Is there any other one? I don't think so. Joyce, you want me to sit down, and I will sit down.